Hi, this is a quick lecture on the article that you're reading on Valerie by Valerie Saiving. This article was published in 1960. This article changed the discipline of theology and really brought women into their own in terms of being able to think about how experience might be important and how women's experience might be different in writing theology. It's available for you to read in its entirety, and I've asked you to read sections of it. She's addressing these important issues of women's experience. Her article makes 3 points, so I want to summarize it for you because some of it can be difficult to read. She first critiques the method and content of theology, and she suggests that it is a result of the assumption that men's experience, interpretation, and thought is universal and can somehow represent human nature as a whole. She focuses on the theological doctrine of sin as it has been expressed by Reinhold Niebuhr and others in the Christian tradition. For example, here's a quote from St. Augustine who says, "What could begin this evil but pride? That is the beginning of all sin. And what is pride but a diverse desire of height, forsaking him, God, to whom the soul ought to solely cleave, as the beginning thereof, to make the self seem that beginning." This is from the City of God. Spoiler alert, her conclusion is that men's experience of sin as pride is not universal. And not only does it not express women's experience of sin, but it is the exact opposite of how women experience sin. In fact, it may be promoting women toward more sin. For women, she concludes, sin is experienced more as triviality, this is a quote, distractibility and diffuseness. It is a lack of an organizing center of focus, a dependence, an overdependence upon others for one's self-determination, tolerance at the expense of standards of excellence. In short, she writes, it is the underdevelopment or the negation of the self. Now, Saiving develops this argument based on biocultural differences between masculine and feminine experience. She draws heavily upon Margaret Mead and other anthropologists and psychologists. The differences given clearly show the advantages are given to men over women, given to masculinity over femininity. And there's a long section in that in which she details that, which you might find interesting to read, keeping in mind that it is written in 1960, so she's referring to references from before 1960, resources, I should say. But in fact, she argues, she cautions, that the truth, of course, is that there is no impassable gulf between the ways in which men and women may look at themselves in their world. Neither is she claiming that all women experience sin in this way exclusively, or that all men's primary sins are pride and the will to power. But rather, the differences are significant enough to demonstrate that Niebuhr and other male theologians are not and cannot speak for all humanity in a universal claim. Now, she concludes with this following quote, suggesting that theology open itself to defining categories, to redefining its categories and assumptions. She says, if it's true that our society is moving from a masculine to a feminine orientation, then theology ought to reconsider the estimate of the human condition and redefine its categories of sin and redemption. For feminine will have its own special potentialities for good and evil, to which a theology based solely on masculine experience may well be irrelevant. Now, I encourage you as you're reading this to go ahead and think about how and reflect on the issues that are being raised. The importance of experience in doing theology, the nature of the differences between men and women, and the formulation of theological doctrines such as sin. How is it that you experience sin? What is what is helpful for you to name ways in which you and others in your context or community experience sin. So I invite you to read that, and hopefully this is going to give you some help in engaging the issues.